And now, aviation weather around Alaska. Hi, I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan with your aviation weather outlook for Alaska for the next couple of days. Starting out on this Monday morning, September 25th, we do have Shoshonen volcano active again here toward the end of the Alaska Peninsula. There have been segments issued for volcanic ash. More recent eruption earlier this Monday morning has sent a plume of ash and gases up to about 28,000 feet. They're drifting southeastward at about 50 knots. So any flight plans here along the lower portion of the Alaska Peninsula, far eastern Aleutians, be aware. Keep in mind, this is as of Monday morning, September 25th. So just check on the latest conditions across this area of the Southwest if you are planning a flight. Otherwise, looking at flying weather conditions Tuesday morning, we have a low that's going to be out here in the North Pacific, southeastern Gulf. Bringing IFR conditions back up into the Panhandle, but not early Tuesday morning, not quite yet. Along the Arctic coast, Beaufort Sea, there are some IFR conditions just off of the coastline, and then a low out in the southwest Bering will have IFR conditions pushing into the western Aleutians early Tuesday. For Tuesday afternoon, widespread VFR conditions across much of the mainland, some areas of MVFR, lower Yukon, Kuskokwim basins, as well as along the Alaska Range. We also see some MVFR conditions, the southern half of the Panhandle, with IFR conditions again lurking just off of the northwest and Arctic coast. And then IFR conditions there out in the western Bering will expand eastward by Wednesday morning as the low begins to head toward the central Bering Sea with a frontal system extending south of it, creating those IFR conditions pushing through the western and entering the central Aleutians. We also see IFR conditions beginning to increase across the southern Panhandle early on Wednesday, and more in the way of IFR conditions along the north slope, especially north side of the Brooks Range, north slope, Arctic coast from around Cape Lisburne up through Utqiagvik all the way back toward Kaktovik. And for Wednesday afternoon, MVFR conditions here across areas of the Panhandle, with that low bringing some breezy conditions and areas of precipitation. MVFR here along the Alaska Range and Copper River Basin, including the Wrangell-St. Elias Mountains, with IFR conditions persisting here out over the Beaufort Sea along the northwest Arctic coast, Utqiagvik, Wainwright, down again toward Cape Lisburne. And then the area of low pressure here in the central Bering will cause IFR conditions to push into St. Lawrence Island as well as St. Matthew. Looking at pass conditions for Tuesday, Anaktuvik Pass there up in the central Brooks Range, VFR conditions, same thing, Adigan Pass there in the Brooks, VFR conditions are anticipated on Tuesday. West arm of the Alaska Range, Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR expected. Could be a little pocket of MVFR west of the west entrance of Merrill Pass. Rainy Pass, VFR. Windy Pass up there in the central Alaska Range, VFR as well. Isabel Pass, VFR though, trying to become MVFR as we go into the midday and afternoon. And Mentasta Pass there toward the Elkham border of the eastern Alaska Range. MVFR conditions rather prevalent during the day on Tuesday. Further south and west, though, Tanita Pass should generally stay VFR on Tuesday. And then across the northwestern Gulf, including Portage Pass, VFR conditions are anticipated there, and eastward out through Prince William Sound. And then finally, in the far north end of the Panhandle, Chilkoot and White will see VFR conditions during the day on Tuesday. Freezing levels at the surface in the early morning. Many areas of the interior will be below freezing to start the day, back through eastern Russia. Freezing levels of aloft are lowest here across the northern portion of the state, generally below 2,000 feet there through the middle upper Yukon Valley, Brooks Range, North Slope. Freezing levels rise up above 6,000 feet once you get out toward the Panhandle early on Tuesday, and then south of the Aleutian chain, freezing levels are right around 6,000 feet along the length of the Aleutians, but south of there as high as 8,000 feet in the North Pacific. Now, with that one low that's going to be pushing up into the southeastern portion of the Gulf, impacting the Panhandle, especially southern portions of the Panhandle, there could be some moderate icing in the thicker cloud cover areas of precipitation above 8,000 feet. Little pockets here across the interior above 3,000 feet, but pretty minor. And then out to the west, that low that's in the southwestern Bering with a frontal system extending around it. We expect freezing levels to be above 6,000 feet here back toward the central Bering and above 8,000 feet just south of the western and central Aleutians. Winds aloft, the jet stream level at 30,000 feet. Winds relatively light across the interior mainland, maybe as high as 50 knots from the south. There is a jet core over 100 knots, upwards around 115 knots from the west-northwest, just south of the Gulf in the North Pacific, with a broad belt of winds 65 to as high as 90 knots there through the lower Bering Sea and the Aleutian Chain. At 9,000 feet, 700 millibars, we have a low circulation here in the southwestern Bering, and winds around that low 35 to 40 knots in that counterclockwise circulation. And then behind me we have the these I got to get myself situated here, because step back a little further. There's the low out over the southeastern panhandle, and it does have some stronger winds, 50 to 60 knots, pushing up there north of Haida Gwaii along the British Columbia intermountain, coastal mountains up into the southern part of the panhandle. We bring it down to 3,000 feet. We still see some of those stronger winds, especially in the vicinity of Ketchikan, Metlakatla. So there could be some isolated severe turbulence. At the very least, we expect moderate turbulence in this area of the panhandle. And then out to the west, the circulation there, we see winds wrapping around that 35 to 45 knots. So areas of most notable turbulence expected on Tuesday. We'll be here across the central southern portion of the Gulf. There could be moderate turbulence, surface to 7,000 feet, and then an area out of the central and western Aleutian Chain, surface to 4,000 feet, associated with the frontal system around that western Bering low. And as a reminder, just if you're in the southwest here, in the vicinity of Shishaldin volcano, check on the latest potential advisories, because we've been in a sequence of eruptions here on and off for the past couple of months. And so we just had one here this Monday morning, and we'll see if that activity lets up for a time. But just as a safety precaution, those of you flying here eastern, far eastern Aleutians and down through the lower portion of the panhandle, check on the latest conditions there with that particular volcano. Thank you.